Hi and welcome. I'm Midnight Truth, and it's so nice to have you here tonight. Wherever you are right now, whether you're in bed, lie on the couch, or just looking for a quiet moment, I want you to know this time is for you. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, feel the way the days start to fade. Let your mind settle. Let your body relax, and let yourself simply be. There's no rush, no pressure, just this calm, quiet moment, if you like. You can close your eyes and imagine yourself in a peaceful place. Maybe it's a cozy room with soft, warm lighting. Or maybe it's under a starry sky, with a gentle breeze brushing against you. Wherever you feel safe and calm, let yourself drift there. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time is it there? Tonight's story is gentle and soothing, perfect to carry you into a deep, restful sleep. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. I never thought I'd be starting over at 37. Not like this. Not in a town I'd never heard of until 2 months ago. In a house that creaked like it was trying to speak. After the divorce, I needed space. Space from memories, space from my old life. And maybe most of all, space from people asking if I was okay. I wasn't, but I was learning how to pretend. I found a listing for the house while scrolling through rentals late one night. It was buried among overpriced apartments and half-finished duplexes. Listed as a quaint fixer-upper with character, ideal for a quiet soul. Cheap, too cheap, but it had everything I thought I needed: space, solitude, and no questions. It sat at the edge of a town called Daggerford, a place I'd never visited before. Just trees, fog, and the kind of silence you only get far away from cities. The house itself was old, 2 stories, narrow with chipped white paint and green shutters hanging crooked on rusted hinges. It had a slanted porch, 3 bedrooms, and a backyard that backed into the woods. The landlord was an older woman named Mrs. Linton. She didn't say much, just handed me the keys and told me to be careful on the stairs. I moved in on a cloudy Thursday. The sky hung low, the air felt heavy, and the wind moved through the trees like something whispering just out of reach. The house smelled of dust and would polish, maybe something sour beneath it. The kind of smell that clung to your clothes even after you left. I kept telling myself it was just old. Old things have quirks. That's part of the charm, right? The first night, I slept on a mattress on the floor in the master bedroom upstairs. No bed frame yet. I listened to the house settling. The way the floorboards groaned, the pipes clanked, and the wind tapped at the windows like fingernails. Normal. That's what I kept saying. Normal. I spent the first few days unpacking, setting up furniture, and adjusting to the quiet. There were no sirens, no shouting neighbors, no traffic. Just silence, broken only by the occasional crow and the groan of the house when the wind picked up. It was on the 3rd day that I met her, Clara, my neighbor. I was walking back from the mailbox when I saw her standing at the edge of her porch next door. She was small, maybe in her 60s, wearing a blue cardigan and holding a cup of tea like it was part of her hand. "You're the new tenant," she said, not a question. "I guess I am," I replied, offering a polite smile. She nodded, took a sip, and stared at the house behind me. Strange choice. That made me pause. Why do you say that? Her eyes didn't leave the upper windows. People don't stay there long, not since the heart leaves. I waited, but she didn't explain. Just turned and went back inside without another word. I didn't think much of it then. Maybe she was just one of those lonely types who enjoyed a little mystery. But that night, as I lay in bed listening to the familiar creaks and groans, I couldn't shake the way she looked at the house. Like it wasn't a house at all, but something watching us back. The first odd thing happened that same night. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up. No sound, no dream, no reason. Just that sudden, jarring kind of wake-up where your heart's already pounding and you don't know why. The room was cold, colder than it had any right to be. I pulled the blanket up, curled tighter. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I sat up, hard in my throat, listening. They moved past the bedroom door, then stopped. I waited. Nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing. After a minute or so, I got up. I told myself it was a house settling again, that maybe a window had been left open, that old houses did this. I opened the door and peeked into the hallway. Empty. The floor was still, the shadows unmoving, but the air was colder out there. Not just drafty, but cold like a refrigerator left open. I checked the thermostat. 71. My skin prickled anyway. The next morning, I brushed it off. Stress, probably. My mind playing tricks. I made coffee, ate toast, and tried to focus on my freelance work. I'm a graphic designer, which means long hours staring at screens, replying to emails, and pretending the logo the client wants isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. Midway through the day, I heard knocking. 3 slow taps. It came from the front door. When I opened it, no one was there. Not a soul. Just the wind moving through the trees, and Clara across the street again, sipping her tea and watching me like she was waiting for something. The days passed. I tried to create routines. Morning coffee, work, lunch, walks in the yard, dinner, reading. But the nights grew harder. The noises didn't stop. I'd hear what sounded like breathing near the door, whispers in the corners of rooms. I'd find doors slightly ajar that I'd shut tight, lights flickering. Once, the kitchen faucet turned on by itself. I checked the plumbing. Nothing wrong. I told myself I was imagining it. Then came the scratching. One night, I was downstairs watching TV when I heard a scratching sound coming from upstairs, like fingernails dragging slowly downward. It was soft at first, like something trying not to be heard, but then it grew louder, more urgent. I went upstairs. Nothing. No one. But the noise stopped the moment I stepped into the hallway. I opened every door, checked closets, looked under the bed. Nothing. And yet, when I returned to the living room, the TV had turned off. The remote was on the floor. I didn't remember dropping it. The next morning, I confronted Clara. What happened to the people who lived here before me? I asked. She hesitated, then stepped closer, lowering her voice. They left in the middle of the night, she said. Couple in their 40s. Moved in a few months before you. Seemed fine at first. Then the woman started complaining. Said she heard someone walking up and down the stairs at night. Said she smelled something burning, even when nothing was cooking. I swallowed hard. What else? She said she felt watched, that something was in the walls. One night she ran out barefoot, screaming that something was sitting on her chest, whispering her name. I didn't know what to say. They never came back with their things. Just left everything behind. Furniture, photos, even food in the fridge. Gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, eyes wide, ears straining for every sound. I don't know what I was expecting, but around 3 a.m., I heard the footsteps again. Heavy, slow, coming down the hallway. This time, they stopped right outside my door, and then knocking. 3 times. I sat up, heart hammering. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Another knock. I reached for my phone. No signal. The room was freezing. I could see my breath. Then I heard it. A whisper. So close it felt like it was inside my head. Get out. I grabbed my bag and bolted down the stairs, not bothering to switch on the lights. I got in the car and drove until the sky turned pink and the fog began to lift. I returned just after sunrise. The house looked innocent in daylight. Quiet. Still. Like nothing had ever happened. But when I went upstairs, something was different. There were muddy footprints in the hallway, leading from the far bedroom to my door. Just one set, bare feet, and on the inside of my bedroom door, 3 long scratch marks. I didn't sleep there again for 3 days. But part of me still didn't want to leave. Not yet. Something about this house pulled at me, like an itch just beneath the skin. And in the back of my mind, a voice whispered something I couldn't quite make out. Not yet. Not yet. The 4th night I stayed at a motel. It wasn't fancy, just a roadside inn with flickering neon signs and paper-thin walls. But it gave me a break from the feeling I couldn't shake in that house. The feeling that I was never alone. That even in silence, something was listening. I kept telling myself I was being irrational, That stress, divorce, isolation, they were all catching up to me. Maybe it was a breakdown, or maybe it was just guilt clawing at the edges of my mind. But those footprints, they were real. I didn't imagine them. The scratches on the inside of the door, asterisk, I didn't make them star. And the cold, that biting, unnatural cold, asterisk, that was real too star. Still, after a night in the motel, I felt a little stronger, a little more in control. I went back to the house the next morning, half expecting to find the windows shattered or the walls bleeding or something equally dramatic. But the house looked normal, quiet, almost welcoming in the daylight. Almost. I opened the front door slowly, half bracing for a rush of cold or the whisper of voices. But all I got was a familiar scent, wood, old paint, and that strange undercurrent of something sour, like rotting fruit or damp fabric hidden for too long. I stepped inside. The footprints were gone. The scratches on the door, still there. And something else. On the kitchen table sat a small cloth-bound book, brown, worn, covered in dust. I hadn't seen it before. It wasn't mine. I didn't touch it at first. Just stared at it, my fingers trembling near the spine. I didn't know where it came from. I was alone in that house. I locked the doors. No one should have been inside, but the book was there. Eventually, I sat down and opened it. The first page had a name written in old ink, Nathaniel Greaves. The script was jagged, almost angry. The pages were yellowed, brittle at the corners. I flipped through and realized it wasn't a journal in the traditional sense. It was more like a log, entries short and fragmented, scattered with strange symbols. Some were in English, others were something else, words I didn't recognize, symbols that twisted my stomach when I stared too long. The earliest entries were dated 1892, the latest 1927. I began to read. Asterisk, the veil is thinnest at the cusp of sleep. That is where I hear them the loudest. Asterisk, asterisk, they come through the walls when the fire dies. Asterisk, asterisk, something beneath the house calls to me. I feel it in the floorboards. It breathes. Asterisk, the further I read, the worse it got. The entries devolved into rambling madness, drawings of twisted faces, things with too many eyes, pages soaked in something brown and flaking. Some pages were torn out. Others were stuck together with what looked like wax, or maybe blood. I slammed the book shut and shoved it into a drawer. Later that afternoon, I went outside, hoping to clear my head. The air was crisp, the trees swayed gently, and for a moment, it felt like nothing was wrong, until I looked up at the attic window and saw a face staring back at me, pale, expressionless, just watching. I froze. I didn't want to mirror that face that direction. No shadows could explain that. No tricks of the light. It was someone or something in the attic. I ran inside up the stairs and yanked down the ladder to the attic door. My heart was pounding. Every instinct told me not to go up, but I did. The attic was dark, cramped, and smelled of dust and old wood. I clicked on the single bulb hanging from the ceiling. It swung slightly, casting long shadows across stacks of boxes and covered furniture. No face, no figure, nothing, just cobwebs and silence. Still, I felt it again, the cold, that unnatural cold pressing against my skin, tightening my chest. And something else, the sound of breathing. Not mine, not quite human. Slow, deliberate. I turned and saw a long crack in the far wall. A crawl space, barely wide enough to fit through. The air pouring from it smelled like dirt and metal. I backed away and left the attic in a rush. That night, I tried to sleep. I left the lights on. I kept the journal closed and stuffed in a drawer under a pile of clothes. But the dreams came. Dark dreams. I saw the house in flames, but the fire didn't burn. I saw shadowy figures standing at the foot of my bed. I saw that same pale face at every window. And beneath the house, I saw something moving. Something huge and slow and waiting. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. It was 3:03 a.m. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and stood behind the door, ready to swing. The steps stopped. The door handle jiggled. Then nothing, just silence. I flung the door open. No one was there, but the floor was wet. Damp footprints led down the hall, bare feet again, leading toward the staircase. This time I followed. I traced the steps all the way to the basement door. I had never opened that door. It had always been locked. But now it was open, just a crack. I pushed it wide. The stairs descended into pitch black, and from the darkness below, I heard chanting, low, muffled, like a dozen voices whispering all at once. I didn't go down. Not that night. I slammed the door and pushed a chair against it. The next morning, I knocked on Clara's door. She answered quickly, as if she'd been expecting me. I found something. I told her. She nodded as though she already knew. Did he leave the book? She asked. I stared at her, stunned. You knew about it? She looked past me, toward the house. Everyone who stayed there finds it eventually. Greaves lived there a long time. He wasn't right. People said he was a doctor, but he wasn't healing anyone. He believed the house was a bridge, said there was something beneath it, something old. A bridge to what? Her voice dropped to a whisper, a place we're not meant to see. I asked her why she never told me this before. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear behind her eyes. Because if you know too much too soon, it starts to notice you. I left without another word. When I got back home, the basement door was wide open again. The footprints were fresh, and just beneath the top stair was a handprint, dark, wet, pressed against the wall. It wasn't mine, and it was far too large to belong to any normal human hand. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with every light on, clutching a baseball bat I found in the hall closet. I wasn't a violent man, never had been, but I needed something, anything asterisk, to make me feel like I had some kind of control. The house was silent, but not peaceful. There's a difference between quiet and the kind of silence that presses in from all sides. The kind that makes you aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat, like the air itself is holding its breath. I kept glancing at the basement door. It was shut again. I didn't remember closing it. At around 2:30 a.m., I started hearing the whispering again. Not voices exactly, more like suggestion of voices, like wind through a hollow pipe or words underwater. I got up, crept to the basement door, and pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Then suddenly, asterisk tap, tap, tap star. 3 sharp knocks from the other side. I backed away. I wanted to leave, to run straight out the front door and never come back. But I didn't. Something about that house, once you were inside it didn't let you go that easily. And the worst part, a small, sick part of me wanted to know what was down there, what was calling, what the journal meant. Like something in the back of my mind was nudging me, whispering, open the door, go down, see for yourself. That morning, I drove straight to the county records office. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a habit of chewing gum like it owed her money. I told her the address of my house and asked if there were any old property records or newspaper archives. She gave me a look I didn't understand at first. Pity, you moved into the Greaves place, she asked. Yeah, I said. Why? She shook her head and sighed. People don't usually last long in that one. A few years back, a man bought it, stayed 3 weeks, then left in the middle of the night. Didn't even pack. Another tenant before that was found wandering the woods behind the house, barefoot, muttering about holes in the walls and voices underground. Do you have any documents on the original owner? She nodded slowly, pulled up an ancient drawer from the filing cabinet, and handed me a dusty manila folder. Inside were old building permits, a death certificate, and several newspaper clippings. The more I read, the colder I felt. Nathaniel Greaves bought the land in 1888, built the house himself, brick by brick. He was described by the papers as a physician of esoteric practices, which I guess was a polite way of saying he was a quack obsessed with the occult. One article caught my eye. Local healer accused of rituals involving missing livestock. It described how neighbors often heard strange chanting at night, saw lights flickering in the attic windows, and found dead animals on their property. Goats, cats, even a deer once, all with strange markings carved into their bodies. Then another article. Widower grieves found deceased in cellar, surrounded by symbols. He died in 1927. The coroner listed the cause of death as self-inflicted exsanguination, though the rest of the article hinted at ritualistic behavior. The police said he was found in a chalk circle, eyes wide open, symbols drawn in blood on every wall. I put the folder down and sat in my car for almost an hour, unable to move. When I finally returned to the house, I noticed something new. There was dirt on the living room floor. Not just dust, fresh dirt, as if someone or something had walked in from outside, except the front door was still locked, and there were no signs of forced entry. The dirt led to the hallway, to the basement door, and this time, the door wasn't just ajar, it was open wide, as if whatever had come up was inviting me to follow it back down. I grabbed a flashlight in the bat and stepped onto the top stair. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of being afraid, or maybe I was already too deep in to walk away. The basement stairs creaked under my weight. The flashlight flickered. The air grew colder with each step. I smelled earth and mildew and something metallic, asterisk blood asterisk, maybe, the kind of smell that sticks to the back of your throat. The basement was bigger than I remembered. The first time I peeked inside, it looked like a normal, cramped cellar. But now it stretched further, much further, like the walls had expanded, or maybe the house had changed. At the far end of the basement was the crawl space I'd seen from the attic. Except now, it was wide enough to walk through, and something was glowing inside. A faint, reddish light, pulsing like a heartbeat. I stepped into crawl space. The walls were damp and soft, like packed dirt. The ceiling was low, and I had to duck. The further I walked, the louder a sound became. Not whispers this time, but chanting. A deep, guttural chant in a language that didn't belong in this world. Then I found it. A circular chamber carved into the earth, lined with symbols identical to those in Greaves' journal. In the center was a stone slab. Above it, suspended by chains from the ceiling, hung a mirror. And in that mirror, I didn't see myself. I saw Greaves, or something wearing his face. He stood in the reflection, smiling. His eyes were wrong, too black, too wide, and his mouth didn't move when he spoke. The words came from behind me. I spun around. Nothing, but I felt it. The air shift, the weight of presence. Suddenly the mirror cracked down the center, and then I saw myself again, only it wasn't me. The man in the mirror looked exactly like me, but he was smiling, eyes empty, lips whispering something I couldn't hear. I ran. I didn't look back. I stumbled through the crawl space, up the stairs, out the door. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping the front yard, covered in dirt and sweat and fear. Clara was there. She didn't say anything at first, just helped me up and walked me to her porch. "I told you," she said softly. He opened something, and it never really closed. I wanted to ask her what to do, how to fix it, how to stop it, but she just looked at me with that same sad, distant expression. "You're marked now," she said. "It knows you. It'll follow you if you try to leave, like it followed the others." "What does it want?" I asked. She paused for a long moment before answering. To be seen, to be remembered, and to come through. That night, I packed my bags anyway. I didn't care what it wanted. I didn't care what followed me. I just needed to get out. But when I stepped into the car, I looked at the rear view mirror. And in the back seat, just for a second, I saw a pale face smiling back at me. I didn't sleep again. I didn't go home either. After seeing that face in the rear view mirror, my own face, but wrong, off, smiling in a way I've never smiled in my life, I drove straight out of town. Didn't pack much. Just threw a few things into a bag and hit the road, hoping I could outrun whatever had followed me out of that house. But here's the thing no one ever tells you about fear. It's not the house that haunts you. It's memory. It's silence after a sound that never finishes. It's light that flickers even when the bulbs are new. It's catching your reflection move when you didn't. The first motel I found was a grim little roadside joint 30 miles west. The kind of place where the carpet always smells wet and the heater hums like a dying animal. I was too tired to care. I paid cash and didn't leave my name. I took a long, hot shower, hoping the steam would clear whatever residue that place had left on me. But as I wiped the fog from the bathroom mirror, I saw it again. The smile, my own face, just barely wrong, tilted too far, mouth too wide, eyes watching me like I was something inside a cage. I turned away. When I looked back, it was gone. The next morning, I drove into town and found the local library. I needed to know more, not just about Greaves, but about what he had brought into that house, what he'd opened. I asked the librarian about old texts, anything on local folklore or occult history. She directed me to the back of the archives, to a section no one had touched in years. Dust blanketed everything. I spent hours combing through yellowed pages and brittle newsprint, and then I found it, a local history pamphlet from 1932. One short paragraph buried in a section called Unexplained Tragedies. In the winter of 1901, several children vanished from the outskirts of town. One boy was found a week later, mute and badly injured, scratching symbols into the dirt with his fingernails. He later died of fever. The same markings were later discovered in the cellar of Dr. Nathaniel Greaves, who claimed to be conducting experiments to thin the veil between realms. Another entry from a private journal kept by a minister in 1905 mentioned a ring of light under the earth and black mouths that whispered in sleep. He claimed the land Greaves built on was cursed, but that Greaves didn't care. He welcomed the curse, saw it as a doorway. My hands trembled as I flipped through more pages. What Greaves had done wasn't just a cult ritual. It was obsession. He believed that reality was only one layer of a much larger, darker system. And at the basement of his home, that room with a mirror and symbols, was a thin spot, a place where the fabric between worlds was worn down. He'd opened it, and now it was open again. That night, I stayed at a different motel. I chose one farther out, isolated, with wide windows and bright lights. I sat with the TV on low volume, just for the noise. Anything to stop that oppressive silence from creeping in again. But around 2 a.m., the air shifted. You don't just hear it, you feel it, like the room contracts. The walls bend slightly inward, the pressure changes, and then the footsteps. Not outside, inside the room. I stared at the space between the bed and the door, but there was nothing. Yet I heard them, heavy, slow, walking in circles around the room. Then the whispering started again, not from a voice, from inside the walls. Not words either, just a constant, breathing kind of whisper, like someone murmuring through rotted wood. And then the mirror in the bathroom began to drip. Water? I thought so at first, but it wasn't water. It was black, thick. It ran down the glass like ink, like something on the other side was leaking through. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the corner with the lamp on, the television buzzing static. The next morning, I looked in the mirror again and saw fingerprints on the inside of the glass. 10 long smudges, as if someone or something had been pressing against the other side, trying to push through. That's when I knew. I hadn't left the house behind. I'd only opened the door wider. Whatever was in that place, whatever Greaves had called into this world, it wasn't tied to the house anymore. It was tied to me. I needed help, not from a priest, not from a cop, from someone who understood this, the ritual, the language, the symbols, the way these things stick to you like oil. So I did something desperate. I called Clara. She picked up after 2 rings, like she'd been expecting it. I can't run from it, I said. No, she replied. You can't, but you can finish what he started. I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't ask. I just drove back to town, back to the house. The sky was the color of dirty snow, and the air smelled like ozone, like the moments before a lightning strike. The wind pushed hard against the trees, and the house seemed taller somehow. Leaning forward, waiting, I stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. Damp wood, iron, and something else, like burnt paper. And the sound, not footsteps this time, breathing, deep, slow, like the house was alive. I found Greaves' journal on the floor, open to a page I hadn't seen before. The ink had bled in places, but the words were still legible. The mirror is not the end. It is the gate. The symbols are not protection. They are invitation. The binding must be completed before the last breath, or the breach remains. I didn't know what it meant, but I felt it in my bones. That mirror wasn't meant to keep something out. It was meant to let something in. And Greaves had failed to finish the process. He died in the circle, but the breach was never sealed. And now it was up to me, because I'd seen it, heard it, let it in. And once you see it, you belong to it. That night, I descended the stairs to the basement again. The symbols were still there. The mirror was still cracked. The air was colder than death. And the shadows didn't stay where they belonged. I don't know what I expected when I walked back into that basement. Maybe part of me thought it would be different in the daylight, less menacing, less alive. But the truth is, the basement was always night. No matter what time it was above ground, down there, it was eternal twilight. The light bulbs barely glowed, just a weak yellow haze that clung to the ceiling like smoke. The air was wet, thick with that same ire and mold smell, but now it carried something else too. Rot. Something had started dying down here. Or maybe something had been dying, slowly, over time, and it had finally noticed me. I stood at the edge of the circle again, the one I had swept away by accident days ago. The lines had returned, not just faintly. They were fresh, as if drawn again recently, but not with chalk this time. The lines were dark, red-brown, thicker, blood. I didn't dare step inside. The mirror was still leaning against a far wall, still cracked in that perfect diagonal, the way I remembered. But now it felt like it was watching me. That makes no sense, I know, but it wasn't just a feeling. The crack in the mirror pulsed slightly, like a vein under skin. It shimmered with a faint, slick sheen. Something on the other side was breathing. Then I noticed it. There were now scratches on the mirror surface, not random ones either. Letters, marks. I stepped closer and squinted. They were backward, but readable if you stared long enough. It said, "Let me out." My hands turned to ice. I took a step back, and the wood beneath my foot groaned. Not like a normal old house groan. This one was sharp, like it was warning me. I froze. Then the floor beneath the circle began to move. Just a little. The dust and blood-red chalk lifted, like something was breathing through the floorboards. The mirror began to tremble in its frame. The air dropped 10 degrees in an instant. My breath misted in front of me. I wasn't just cold. I was being watched. I bolted up the stairs, every step groaning in protest. When I slammed the door shut behind me, I swore I heard something scrape the other side, like fingernails dragging slowly along wood. That night, I called Clara again. I went back. I told her. The circle's been redrawn. Not with chalk. Blood. The mirror's writing messages now. There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "You need to read the rest of the journal." I did. "No," she said, firm. "You didn't. You read what it let you see." That chilled me more than the basement had. I retrieved the journal again. This time I noticed something. The back of the leather cover had warped slightly, like a second layer had been glued in. I peeled it gently and found a false lining. Inside was a small, folded piece of yellow paper. Written in an unsteady hand were 4 lines. To seal the breach, one must give. What Greaves took, yet did not live. A name, a breath, a drop of red, or walk with those who are not dead. What Greaves took, a soul, blood, a name, the pieces didn't fit. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every creak of the house sounded too deliberate, like footsteps on the floor above. But I lived alone. There was no one upstairs. Still, the sound kept coming. I grabbed the flashlight and forced myself to check. Every room was empty until I opened the guest bedroom. That door had been stuck since I moved in. I'd never even been able to get it open. But now, it swung wide like it had never been jammed. And inside was a mattress. It hadn't been there before. Stained, lumpy, no frame, just a mattress on the floor with a single yellow pillow. I approached cautiously, light trembling in my hand. And then I saw it, scratched into the wall just above the bed. Deep, uneven marks that spelled out, "You're next." I staggered back, hit the hallway wall, and dropped the flashlight. When I picked it up, the beam caught something on the floor just beside the bed. A handprint, but not mine. Too small, and burned into the wood like it had been pressed there by something red hot. I backed out of the room, shut the door, and shoved the chair under the knob. That didn't help. Around 3 a.m., I heard scratching again. Not from below this time, from inside the walls. At first, it was faint, like a mouse, maybe, but then it grew louder, heavier, nails dragging wood. I put my ear to the wall beside my bed and heard it clearly. Whispers, low, rushed, like prayers spoken backward. And then a single word hissed through the plaster, right against my ear. "Run." I jumped back so fast I fell against the bedpost. That was it. I grabbed my car keys. I didn't care if it was raining, dark, if I had no plan. I needed to leave that house. But as I reached the front door, every light in the house went out, all at once. Pitch black. My chest went tight. I took one shaky step toward the doorknob. Then I heard the floorboards creak behind me. Slow, deliberate, too heavy to be mine. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The air pressed in from all sides. I was choking, gasping. Then the voice whispered again, right behind me. You gave no name, but you did. And that's when I remembered. The first night, when I saw the shadow in the mirror, I'd spoken aloud. I said my name. I gave it freely. And I knew, in that moment, that was the invitation. That was what opened the door. I turned around slowly. There was no one there, just shadows that bent wrong, shapes that didn't match the furniture. But I felt it watching, waiting. I backed away, hand on the doorknob, and then I heard the mirror break. Asterisk fully asterisk, this time. Shatter like a scream. The sound echoed up from the basement, like something huge had escaped. I flung the door open and ran into the night. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up. Now I'm sitting in a diner 30 miles away, hands still shaking, trying to decide what to do next. But deep down I know the truth. I left the house, but it didn't leave me. The mirror was just a gate, and I opened it. I drove until the gaslight came on. Somewhere along a stretch of back road that cut through thick woods, I pulled over to a rusted gas station that looked like it hadn't seen business in years. The old man behind the counter didn't say much, just stared too long and nodded when I asked where the nearest motel was. He pointed north and mumbled, "You're better off sleeping in your car." I didn't ask why. I already knew. Nothing felt safe anymore. Not the road, not the air, not the silence. Especially not the silence. Because even with the engine off, the whispering hadn't stopped. It wasn't in my head, not exactly. It was like my ears were tuned into something else now. A different frequency. Every now and then I could almost make out words, but they were wrong. Warped, like they'd passed through too many mouths to still be human. At the motel, I paid cash. No ID. The woman at the desk handed me a room key without looking up. Room 12. The carpet in the hallway was sticky. Inside the room, the air was thick and still, like it hadn't been opened in months. There was a dusty Bible in the drawer and a cigarette burn on the nightstand. But no mirrors. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe, tried to process what had happened. The basement, the mirror, the words carved into my walls, the shadows, and that voice, that thing that knew my name. It was still with me. I could feel it, like a film on my skin, a weight on my shoulders, always just over my shoulder, but never quite visible. I thought maybe reading more of the journal would help. I had grabbed it before I ran. Don't remember doing it, but it was in my backpack when I stopped to check. I opened it again, hoping for answers. And this time, new pages had appeared. I swear to you, they weren't there before. The handwriting was Messier now, frantic. Words slashed across the page, as if the writer had been in a panic. There were stains on the paper, watermarks or tears, maybe even blood. I couldn't tell. The passage read, asterisk, I tried the sealing ritual. It failed. Something came through. Not just one. It brought others. I thought the mirror was a gate, but the truth is worse. The mirror is the eye. It sees. It watches. And once it sees you, it never forgets. Asterisk. Asterisk names our power. It needs one to latch onto to find its shape. I gave it mine once. And now I am no longer just myself. It walks inside me, wears me, speaks through me when I sleep. Asterisk. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it already knows you. You've already spoken your name aloud. You've already looked into the eye. Asterisk. I slammed the journal shut. My chest was tight again. That same choking pressure. And then I heard it. Footsteps. In the motel room above mine. Heavy. Slow. Back and forth, pacing. Then it stopped. I listened, holding my breath, and the floor creaked directly above me, like someone was standing still, listening back. I waited for what felt like an hour. No movement, no sound, just silence. Then, suddenly, a knock. Not at the door, at the bathroom wall. 3 sharp knocks, then scraping, nails across the tile. I stood up, blood rushing in my ears, and grabbed the chair by the table. I didn't have a weapon, nothing sharp. I held the chair like a shield, and then the bathroom door slowly creaked open on its own. The light flickered, and the mirror above the sink, the one I hadn't noticed before, was no longer blank. It was filled with fog, and handprints. Dozens of small, oily handprints pressing from the inside of the mirror, smearing in patterns, as if they were trying to find a way out. And then a face appeared. But it wasn't mine. It stared at me through the fog glass. Dark eyes, hollow and deep, skin like wax. Its mouth moved, but I couldn't hear anything. So I stepped closer. Its lips moved again. This time, I heard a whisper, not to my ears, but inside my skull. Asterisk, I see you. Asterisk, the mirror shattered. Glass flew across the bathroom like a bomb had gone off. I shielded my face with my arms and stumbled back, falling against the wall. The pieces of glass didn't fall to the floor. They hovered, midair, glinting. And then, one by one, they turned to face me, like fragments of 100 eyes, all watching. The whispering returned, louder this time, but layered, like multiple voices, speaking over each other. Some male, some female, some not human at all. I grabbed the journal and ran out of the room, leaving everything else behind. I didn't care where I went, just away, far. But no matter how far I drove, the whispers followed. Even now, they hum low under the sound of the engine, and every reflection I pass, windows, side mirrors, puddles, shows just a flicker of something else, something following, something that sees. I pulled over on the side of the road an hour ago, parked under a flickering street lamp in the middle of nowhere. I thought I'd finally found a moment of peace, but I was wrong, because when I looked up into the rear view mirror, it wasn't my reflection anymore. It was his, Greaves, and he smiled. I drove until the sky began to turn gray, not from morning, not from sunlight, but from a kind of smoggy, dense fog that rolled over the hills like smoke. It wasn't natural. It didn't move like weather. It clung to ground, slow and heavy, hiding the road just beyond the headlights. Even the trees looked twisted in it, bent, almost watching. I hadn't seen another car in hours. No signs, no buildings, just road, endless and unraveling like a bad dream. And the whispers, always the whispers. They changed now, less random, less chaotic. They formed patterns, cadences, like someone talking in the next room. A muffled conversation just out of reach. Sometimes I'd catch a word or two. My name, the word, home, and Greaves. I didn't know what he was. Not yet, but I knew he was behind all of this, or inside it, and now maybe inside me. I couldn't trust what I saw anymore. Every glance into glass, every puddle, every surface with a reflection, it would twist. A flicker of a face behind mine, eyes that weren't mine staring back. At one point, I smashed the rear view mirror with my fist. Shards scattered across the dashboard, drawing blood. I didn't care. I was done seeing things that shouldn't be seen. But that night, I ended up somewhere I didn't plan to go. Back in Bell Ridge. Back to the house. I didn't mean to return. The GPS rerouted me 5 times. Roads closed. Bridges out. Nothing but detours. And then I passed that Crooked Street sign. Wicker Lane. The one with the letters half melted from an old fire. My hands trembled on the wheel. I don't remember turning. Don't remember parking. But I found myself staring at the house again. The porch light flickered, just like before. The house looked worse now. More decayed, like months had passed instead of days. The shutters dangled on rusted hinges. The paint peeled in jagged strips. And that smell, wet wood and something rotting, poured from every crack. Still, I walked to the porch. The door was open, not fully, just enough to invite. And on the floor in the dust, a trail of handprints. Small, childlike, leading inside. I should have run. Any sane person would have. But it was like I was tethered. Like something had hooked into me and was reeling me back in. I couldn't explain it. My legs moved on their own. Inside, the house was worse. Dark, but not empty. The walls breathed. I'm not exaggerating. The plaster pulsed gently in and out, like lungs just beneath the surface. I pressed my hand against it and felt warmth. And the sound, not just whispers now, laughter, children, soft, distant, twisted. I followed the sound into the hallway. Every step felt like walking underwater. My breath got heavier. My skin burned cold. The photos on the wall, those same old, faded portraits of strangers, had changed. They looked at me now, all of them, eyes wide, mouths stretched in silent screams. And in one of the frames, I swear I saw my face, staring out, mouth open, eyes hollow. I stumbled back, and the hallway stretched, longer than before, like the house was changing again, molding itself around me. I made it to the basement door. It was open. Of course it was. That awful draft rose from below, icy, foul, thick with mildew and something else. Something burned. And there it was. The mirror. Perfect. Untouched. Somehow repaired. Standing at the base of the stairs like it had been waiting for me. I took a step down. Then another. The light behind me dimmed. The journal was clutched to my chest like a lifeline. I opened it, flipping past the old pages, hoping for some kind of instruction, some escape hatch. And there, near the end, a single line. Asterisk, it ends when it's named. Asterisk, that was all. It ends when it's named. I didn't understand, but I kept reading, hoping for more. And that's when I noticed a second line below the first, written in a shaky, unfamiliar scrawl. Asterisk, grieves is not the first. Asterisk, I reached the bottom step, and the mirror began to ripple, not like glass, like water, like something trying to cross through my reflection surface. But it wasn't just me. Standing behind me in the reflection was a woman. I turned, no one there, but in the mirror, she was still there, pale, wet, eyes black and mouth torn at the corners like she'd been screaming for years. She leaned closer, mouth open in a whisper I couldn't hear. Then the whisper entered my head. Asterisk, call it by its true name. Asterisk. The mirror shattered again, but this time it didn't break into shards. It melted. The silver poured down like mercury, revealing the wall behind it. No, asterisk, not asterisk wall. A doorway, a passage, covered in runes and soot, carved deep into the house's foundation. And from inside that tunnel, something crawled. Long fingers, gray skin, a face without features, just folds like melted wax. It whispered. I screamed. I don't know how long I was down there. I don't know how I escaped. I remember light. I remember running. I remember the sound of children laughing as I burst through the front door and into the night. And I remember the voice. Clear this time. Asterisk, you look too long. Asterisk, now I'm back in my car, parked by the edge of a field, somewhere I don't recognize. The journal lies open on the seat beside me, and a new page has appeared, blank, waiting for me to write. But I won't. I'm not giving it a name. Not yet, because I think I know now. It's not just a house. Me? I haven't slept in days. Or maybe I have, but only with my eyes open. It's hard to tell now. Time doesn't work the same way it used to. Daylight flickers like a dying bulb, and night stretches longer than it should. I see shadows move before I blink. Sometimes I wake up in places I don't remember driving to, with the engine cold and the keys still in my lap. The worst part? I'm starting to forget things. Names, dates, even the sound of my own voice. There's something hollow inside me now, like the house carved out a part of my soul and left the space open for something else. Something older, something watching. I tried checking into a motel outside Belridge. Something simple, a place with fluorescent lights and scratchy sheets and paper-thin walls. I thought maybe I could get away from it. Maybe all I needed was distance. But it followed, not just the nightmares. Those were bad enough, but the sounds. Scratching the walls, laughter under the floor, and the mirror in the bathroom, it fogged up on its own. Every time I turned my back, a handprint would appear. Not mine, too small. Then last night, I heard footsteps again. Heavy, deliberate, just like they were in the house. They crossed the motel room above me, but I was on the top floor. I packed my things and left at 3:17 a.m., didn't even check out, just drove. The journal was still on the passenger seat, its pages no longer blank. Words kept appearing on their own, written in shaky, fading ink, like someone whispering to me from the other side of time. Asterisk, it knows you now. Asterisk, asterisk, you woke it. Asterisk, asterisk, run all you want. Asterisk, this morning, I went to the town library. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could find some kind of record, some explanation. Anything that might help me undo this thing before it fully takes me. The librarian was old, frail. She didn't look up as I walked in, didn't say a word. But I noticed something strange. Her hands. She had 6 fingers on each, all thin and curled like dry leaves. I told myself it was just a birth defect. I didn't ask questions. I just kept walking, in the local history section. There was almost nothing about the house, as if someone had gone through and erased it from every record. No deeds, no blueprints, no permits. But tucked behind an old map of Belridge was a manila envelope, stuffed with loose papers and photographs. I took it to a corner and began to read. That's when I first saw his name again. Greaves. Dr. Alton Greaves. He wasn't just the house's last known resident. He was its architect, a scholar of forgotten religions. He'd studied ruins in Turkey, caves in Siberia, and temples in part of Africa that were blacked out on the map. He was obsessed with doors, not physical ones, but the kind that led elsewhere. Thin spaces, he called them. Places where the veil between worlds could be pierced. He'd built the house on Wicker Lane to be a kind of key, a machine made of wood and whispers. He'd spent years performing rituals in the basement, inviting things in. Not demons, exactly. No horns, no hellfire, but something else. Something ancient without a name. Something that fed on memory, on identity, on self. One article in the envelope was from an old newspaper. Asterisk, asterisk, Belridge Times. 1952, asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, local architect found dead inside home of his own design. Body covered in symbols. No signs of forced entry. Asterisk. Next to the article, a photo. It was hard to make out, old and faded. But I recognized the window behind him. It was the living room. He'd carved something into the wall behind his body. Deep gashes in plaster. I copied it down. The symbols. The shapes. Hoping maybe it was a spell, a way to close whatever he opened. That night, I tried returning to the house one last time. But something stopped me before I reached the street. Every street light blinked out, one by one, until the only light came from the house itself. A red glow in the upstairs window, like fire through blood. And I heard it again, my voice, calling from inside. But it wasn't just a sound. It was me, sobbing, pleading, screaming my own name over and over. I hit the brakes, and something walked past my car. A man? No, not quite. His limbs were wrong. Too long. His neck bent at an unnatural angle, and his face was covered in that same melted wax texture I'd seen before. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth flesh and a sound that came from deep inside his chest, like someone choking on smoke. He didn't look at me, but I knew he saw me. I reversed out of that street. So fast, I almost flipped the car. I drove until my hands stopped shaking, until my own voice stopped echoing in my head. I'm not going back again. Not yet, but the house isn't done with me. Because this morning, I woke up in a different town, one I'd never been to before, and the people here, they know me. A gas station clerk said, "You're the guy from the Greaves place, right?" I didn't answer. He smiled. "She's been waiting for you," and handed me a key. Room 17. The same number etched into the mirror in the house's basement. The motel I'm in now looks exactly like the first one. Same curtains, same scratchy sheets, same mildew smell in the air. Only difference? The mirror is missing. Instead, there's a hole in the wall, a perfect oval, just big enough to crawl through, and inside I hear breathing. Slow, patient. I sat across in that hole in the wall for what felt like hours. The motel room around me was silent, but not empty. The kind of silence that breathes, that presses in on your ears until you're convinced you're underwater. I couldn't take my eyes off the dark oval carved into plaster. It wasn't just a hole, it was too perfect, too round. No cracks, no mess, just a clean shape, like something had melted through the wall with heat or something else. And the breathing, it wasn't constant. It came in waves, long, slow inhales followed by an eerie pause, then shallow, sharp exhales like something mimicking human pattern, but never quite getting it right. I told myself I wouldn't get close, that I'd leave, get in the car, drive until the tank ran dry. But I didn't move. Something about it, something inside, pulled at me, not curiosity, exactly, more like recognition. The same way you recognize a nightmare, even if you've never lived it before. I inched forward. My knees creaked against the carpet, and I reached for my phone. I flicked on the flashlight and aimed it into the hole. Nothing, just blackness, deeper than any distance my light could reach. Then the sound shifted, the breathing stopped, and something moved. Not a lot, just a shuffle, like skin brushing against wood. Then a voice. Not loud, not harsh, but it was mine. "Help me," it whispered. "I can't see." I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the light spinning across the room in jerky bursts. When I picked it up again, the hole was gone. I blinked. The wall was whole, painted, untouched, like it had never been broken. I stood up and backed away, suddenly aware of every creak in the floor beneath me. Every breath I took felt shallow, like the air had thickened. My skin crawled with a tingling itch, like I had just brushed against a hive of invisible insects. I packed my things again, not caring if I left clothes behind or forgot my wallet. I had to leave. I had to, but the motel door wouldn't open. The lock clicked, turned halfway, then jammed. I yanked, twisted, even threw my shoulder into it, but it held like steel. Then the light bulb overhead flickered and burst with a snap. Darkness flooded the room, and in that dark, a sound, faint, distant, rose from beneath the floorboards. Singing, a child's voice. Off-key, soft. I dropped everything and kicked the door with both feet. On the third try, the frame splintered, and I fell into the hallway. There was no one around. No footsteps. No clerk. No signs of life. Just a corridor stretching on, with every door slightly ajar, swaying as if a breeze was passing through, though the air was still. I ran, out the front, into the parking lot. My car was there, but the windshield was covered in dirt. No, not dirt. Symbols. The same ones from the journal. The same ones carved into the floor beneath the old rug in the house's living room. I didn't stop to wipe them off. I just got in and drove, all the way back to Belridge. I know how that sounds. But you have to understand, there's no safety outside the house. Whatever grieves open, it's not in that house anymore. It is the house. And pieces of it are bleeding into everything around me. The motel, the people, my own reflection. I saw my eyes change in the mirror today, just for a second. The pupils stretched vertical, like a goat's, and in the corner of the glass, I saw her again, the woman from the dream, the woman I saw outside the basement. Only now, she wasn't crying. She was smiling. The journal is almost full now. Pages I never wrote and are covered in tight, looping script. I found one this morning that simply said, asterisk, you'll come back to her. They always do. Asterisk. And under it, in smaller print, asterisk, the house needs to feed. Asterisk, I stopped at a gas station just outside Belridge this evening. I needed air, coffee, sanity. The man behind the counter looked up as I entered and smiled too wide. You're getting close, he said. She's excited. I didn't respond. I just left. But when I started the car again, the radio turned on by itself. Static at first, then voices. Mine. Dozens of versions of it. Laughing. Screaming. Whispering. Chanting words I didn't understand. I yanked the battery cable. The voices stopped. But now, as I sit in the car, parked on Wicker Lane just beyond the curve where the trees open up the house, I swear I saw someone walk past the upstairs window. Not fast, not trying to hide, just watching, waiting. And the front door? It's open, not wide, just a crack, like an invitation. Or a dare. Should I go in? The air shifted the moment I stepped through the door. It wasn't just cooler, it tasted different. Heavier, metallic, almost like the scent of blood after a nosebleed. The door creaked shut behind me without a touch, and in the stillness that followed, I felt something settle over the house, like a lid closing on a jar. The house was exactly as I'd left it, on the surface. The boxes I had unpacked weeks ago still lined the hallway. My coat still hung on the hook. The same lamp still flickered weakly in the living room. But the silence was wrong. Not the kind of silence that meant peace. The kind of silence that held its breath. Watching, listening, waiting. I moved cautiously down the hall, the floorboards moaning beneath my steps. I half expected the lights to blink out or the shadows to move ahead of me, but they didn't. They stayed still, too still. That was worse. I turned toward the kitchen, and the smell hit me. Rotting meat, damp earth, something burned. I covered my nose and pushed the swinging door open. There were feathers on the counter. Dozens of them, black, oily, arranged in a perfect circle. In the center, a single eye stared up at me. Glass? No, it blinked. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair, and the circle scattered. The feathers spun upward briefly, as if caught in a sudden breeze. When I blinked, they were gone. Gone. I heard laughter from upstairs. A woman's voice, soft, lilting, familiar. I ran up the stairs, skipping the ones I knew would creak. The hallway was pitch dark, though I hadn't turned off any lights. I reached the top and hesitated. The laughter had stopped, but something else took its place. Scraping, a slow drag across the wood floor, followed by a shuffle, then breathing. From the master bedroom, my room, I pushed open the door, and the air inside was colder than outside. My breath fogged. I stepped in, and the door creaked shut behind me. The light wouldn't turn on. I tapped my phone's flashlight and scanned the room. It was empty, at first. Then behind the dresser, a flicker, movement. I approached slowly, heart pounding in my throat. My hand trembled as I aimed the light into the narrow space between the dresser and the wall. A face stared back. Mine, mouth wide open in a silent scream, eyes black and endless. I dropped the phone. The room went dark, and something crawled across the floor, fast and low, brushing against my ankle. I screamed and bolted out the door, nearly tumbling down the stairs. I grabbed the railing, heart racing, and when I looked back, the hallway behind me was alive. The wallpaper rippled like flesh. The floor pulsed, boards rising and falling like breathing lungs. From every door, hands reached out, long, pale arms, fingers twitching and curling, and all of them were pointing toward the attic door. I turned to flee, but the front door slammed shut, the bolt sliding in with a metallic click. Trapped again. I knew what the house wanted. It had been guiding me from the start, to the attic, to her. I took a deep breath and climbed. Each step groaned under my weight, protesting. The higher I went, the darker it became. My flashlight was dead. My ears rang with a high-pitched tone, and a pressure built behind my eyes. At the top, I reached for the attic pull string, but it dropped on its own. I pulled it. The door creaked down, and a wave of freezing air washed over me. Dust fell like snow. I climbed a ladder, each rung colder than the last. At the top, I pulled myself into the attic. Total blackness. Then light, faint red, flickering from the far end of space. Candles, dozens of them, arranged in circles. Symbols drawn in soot on the wood around them. In the center of it all was a chair. Someone was sitting in it. A woman, hair long and dark, hanging over her face. Her arms were bound to the rest with rope, and her mouth was sewn shut. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She was breathing. Alive? I stepped closer, and the symbols beneath my feet glowed faintly with every step. Heat prickled my skin. I was within 10 feet when her head twitched upward. Her eyes opened. She wasn't afraid. She was angry. I froze. Then I noticed the walls. They weren't walls anymore. They were mirrors. And in every one of them, I wasn't alone. Behind me, in the reflection, were figures. Dozens, faceless, standing silently, staring, their outlines flickering like static. I turned around. Nothing, but the air had changed. Heavy, pressing against me like water. The woman in the chair raised her head higher now, her sewn lips trembling. The stitches began to bleed. Threads snapped one by one. Her mouth opened. She screamed. But it wasn't a sound, it was a wave, a force. It hit me like a train, knocking me off my feet. The candles exploded, the attic shuddered, and the mirrors shattered inward, shards flying. I covered my head. When I opened my eyes, she was gone. The attic was empty, but the circle was still there, burnt into the wood, and the journal sat at its center. New pages had been added. The first read, asterisk, you saw her. She saw you. Now you belong. Asterisk, underneath, a note in my handwriting. Asterisk, don't trust the reflections. Asterisk, I left the attic in a daze, heart hollow, mind unraveling. But the house wasn't done with me. As I reached the bottom step, the floor beneath me split, just enough for me to fall. I landed in the basement. The lights above me flickered on. It had changed. The walls were covered in symbols. Bones hung from strings. The furnace was wide open, glowing, not with fire, but with pulsing red light. The journal sat on the ground beside it, and next to it, a mirror, a tall, oval mirror, cracked but intact. My reflection stared back. Then it smiled. I didn't. And in the glass, I saw the woman again. Behind me, getting closer. I didn't move. Couldn't move. My legs felt cemented to the cold concrete floor. The reflection kept smiling, my smile, but not mine. It was wider, wrong, stretched beyond the limits of flesh. My eyes in the mirror were black pits, like twin wells that had no bottom. And behind me, in the reflection, the woman crept forward. Her feet didn't touch the ground. She floated, jerking like a puppet tug on fraying strings. Her sewn mouth was partly open now, the skin torn at the corners. Blood dripped steadily down her chin, black in the low red glow of furnace. I forced myself to turn around. Nothing. The basement was empty again, but my reflection still smiled. I backed away slowly, pulse thudding in my throat. The mirror didn't back with me. It stepped forward. I turned and bolted toward the stairs, taking them two at a time, lungs burning. But the top of the staircase stretched, longer than it should have been. For every step I took, the landing got farther away. The walls pulsed when breathing. The smell of rot grew stronger. The walls were sweating. Then I slipped. My foot slid on something slick. Too slick, not just water. It was blood. A thin sheet of it now covered the steps. I scrambled, half crawling, until my hands hit something solid. A door, not the top of the staircase. A door I had never seen before. Old, wooden, rounded at the top like a church arch. It wasn't there before. I should have been back in the kitchen. I hesitated, then turned the handle. It was warm to the touch. Too warm. The door swung open without a sound. Behind it was a hallway, narrow, lit by a single hanging bulb that buzzed faintly. The walls were lined with old photographs, sepia-toned, their frames warped and cracking. Each one showed someone standing in front of the house, alone, and in every picture they were blurred, not from age or motion. Their faces were blurred, smudged as if someone had wiped them away with a thumb. The only detail that remained clear in every photo was the background, asterisk my house star. I kept moving. The hallway seemed to go on forever. I counted 37 steps before I saw the next door. It was cracked open and faint light flickered inside. I pushed it wider. It was a room. Stone walls. No windows. A single desk in the middle, piled high with papers and an old leather-bound book. The journal. Not the one I found in the attic. A second one. This one was older, asterisk darker star, covered in soot and cracked from age. I picked it up. The leather squirmed under my fingers like it was still alive. I flipped it open. Blank pages at first. Then in the center, one single entry, scrawled in faded red ink. Asterisk, the mirror opens to those it remembers. Asterisk, I read it again, then turned the page. A sketch, drawn in black charcoal. It was me, standing at the mirror. Behind me, the woman. But in this drawing, her face was whole, and she was smiling. Not the kind of smile I'd seen before. Something softer, something familiar. My skin crawled as realization bloomed like mold behind my eyes. She looked like my mother. Not exactly, but close enough. Same cheekbones, same mouth. A resemblance I hadn't noticed in the attic. I flipped more pages, frantic now. They were filled with sketches of people, dozens of them, men, women, children, each of them standing in the same basement, each reflected in the mirror, and behind each of them, the same figure, sometimes distorted, sometimes clearer. Her. I dropped the book. It landed spine up, and the candlelight in the room dimmed. I felt breath on my neck, warm, close, and a whisper, so faint I barely caught it. Asterisk, come back to me. Asterisk. I turned sharply. Empty room, but now the mirror was there again. It had followed me, standing in the corner, freestanding, its base rooted in nothing. My reflection was gone. Instead, the woman stood there, hand outstretched. Her fingers pressed against the glass, and slowly, they pushed through. The mirror wasn't a mirror anymore. It was a door. I backed away, but the room swayed, the walls bleeding shadows. I stumbled into the desk, knocking over the journal. It split open again, pages fluttering wildly in a wind that had no source. A new page appeared, a message in my own handwriting. Asterisk, you let her out. Now she wants what's hers. Asterisk, my hands shook. I ran, out the door, down the hallway that twisted behind me as I fled. I didn't care where I ended up, just away. When I finally burst into my living room, it was nearly morning. The light outside was pale, weak. The house looked normal again, but I knew it wasn't. I could feel her now, in every corner, in the reflection of the window, in the faint rattle of the furnace, in the way the front door always seemed to lock itself. I tried to leave, tried to pack up and drive out, but the car wouldn't start. My phone refused to call anyone. Every time I looked out the window, I saw the street curb backing on itself. I walked for hours once and ended up in the backyard. Always, back here. I don't think I live in the house anymore. I think the house lives in me, and it's waiting for the last page, because I found the journal again this morning. It was open on the kitchen table, and the newest entry, It was dated tomorrow. It read, asterisk, he will return to the attic. He has no choice. Asterisk. I didn't want to go back to the attic. I tried everything not to. Piled furniture in front of the hatch. Locked the bedroom door. Took sleeping pills to force myself to rest. But sleep wouldn't come. The pills only slowed my thoughts, made them foggy, like I was dreaming while awake. I'd blink and find myself standing at the attic door, hand on the rope, and each time I'd scream and stumble back. But it was always closer. Always there. On the third night, I woke up on the floor with splinters in my knees, the attic door wide open above me. I climbed halfway up the ladder in my sleep. Or maybe I hadn't. Maybe something else had pulled me. The house no longer creaked at night. It sighed, like it was breathing, slow and steady. Watching, waiting. And the mirror? It moved again. It was in my bedroom when I opened my eyes one morning, just standing there. Its surface rippling faintly, like water. My reflection was there, but not right. My arms were at my sides, but the reflection was raising its hand, waving. That's when I decided I couldn't stay. I had to end this, whatever it was. I dressed quickly, grabbed the journal, and went up to the attic, every step heavier than the last. The hatch creaked open like it was expecting me. Dust swirled in the narrow beam of light, slicing through the broken window. The room hadn't changed, and yet it felt different. Tighter, like it had walls that weren't visible. Walls that leaned in, listening. The mirror was already there, centered perfectly. And this time, I didn't see myself in the reflection. I saw her, fully, standing on the other side. Her stitched mouth was open now, the skin hanging in wet flaps. Her eyes gleamed with something ancient, something that had waited too long. And beside her, barely visible, were shapes, other figures, dozens of them, faint, whisper-thin, like smoke trapped behind glass. They pressed their hands against the mirror from within, faces warped in agony. I opened the journal. There was one page left, and it was blank, but I had a pen in my pocket. Without thinking, I began to write. Not words I understood, just symbols, spidery shapes that came from nowhere. My hand moved on its own, the pen scratching deep into paper. The attic grew colder, the air sharp like knives. Then a voice, low, guttural, filled the room. Not from the mirror, from everywhere. You've seen, you've called. The mirror pulsed. I dropped the pen, stepped back, and it cracked. A thin, jagged line split the surface from top to bottom. The woman didn't move, but the room did. The attic trembled. The beams above groaned as if under tremendous pressure. The mirror cracked again, then shattered inward, sucking air with a roar. A howl erupted from the space beyond, full of rage and hunger. And all at once, everything stopped. Silence. The attic was empty. No mirror, no book, just a faint sound of wind outside the broken window. I was alone. It was over. Or so I thought. That night, I tried again to leave. This time, I made it outside. The car started. The driveway was clear. I drove and kept driving. Out of town, out of the county. I checked into a motel 2 hours away. Slept for the first time in days. Dreamless until 3:07 a.m. I woke to the sound of breathing. Heavy, close. I turned on the light and saw the mirror standing at the foot of the bed. Impossible. I'd left it behind. My reflection stood inside, but it wasn't me. It wore my face, but its eyes were wrong. Black, glossy, infinite. Then it smiled and raised its hand. I screamed. Through the lamp, shattered the glass, and the mirror vanished. But the next day, when I checked out the motel, the clerk handed me a note. "Left for you last night," she said. No name, just a plain envelope. Inside was a photograph. Old, sepia-toned, faded. It showed the house, my house, and someone standing in front of it. Me. My face was blurred. I dropped the photo and ran. I've been moving ever since. No place for more than a few nights. I avoid mirrors, avoid reflections. I even turn off the screens on my phone, my laptop, anything that might show me something I don't want to see. But it doesn't matter. They still find me, sometimes in puddles after the rain, sometimes in a reflection of someone else's glasses on the subway. She's always there, just watching and waiting. I understand now. The mirror never belonged to the house. The house belonged to the mirror. And once you've seen her, once she's seen you, you never really leave. You just keep running until the day she decides it's time to come back. And when that day comes, there won't be a door to close, only a reflection, smiling back, silently mouthing the words, "Come home."